The appeal court in Zamfara have declared the election there inconclusive and is calling for a rerun where we say about 3 local government areas have been affected. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies, where we keep you updated with all that is happening in news and current affairs in Nigeria and then within other countries as well. I am Sela Elishadasham and I'll be doing the program together with Rachel Tanzi. Good morning.
Morning, Sela.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank God it's Friday.
It's Friday.
Yes, please, our viewers at home, you can keep a date with us on Facebook and on YouTube as well, so we can know what your own views are concerning any of the stories that is of interest to you. And we will go straight into the papers, starting with the Leadership newspaper.
On the Leadership newspaper, starting with the big story, Supreme Court Judicial Council to screen 22 justices. The writer under the story, only 11 will join Apex Court bench. North Central Southeast top with 12 nominees. You can find details on page 7. Appeal Court declares Zamfara poll inconclusive. Bala Yusuf no fate today. 2024 budget can't be funded with borrowing, coming from the Finance Minister Wale Edun. You can find details of his statement on page 7. One killed as police sheds clash in Kaduna State. You can find details on page 6. And at the downside of the paper, labor strike, importers bemoan surcharge, and you can find more details on page 19. We have a picture story where we can see our president with the president of Guinea-Bissau yesterday, and that's all the news on Leadership Friday edition.
All right, let's take a look at Daily Independent newspaper. Appeal Court declares Zamfara Guba election inconclusive, with the writer following under says as PDP call for disbandment of Plateau election appeal panel over alleged inducement. You can find detail of the story in the paper. Also, we have on Owerri abduction, Senate summons security chief over kidnap of Major General Dura, with the writer saying we will enact laws to address root causes of insecurity. This is coming from the Speaker, Abbas. The big story here says Saudi Arabia draws flag for cancelling 177 Nigerians' visa on arrival. Air Peace clarify position. You can find detail for those who have been affected and those who are wondering the side of the story. And on the bankruptcy claim, Obi challenges federal government to declare state of inherited coffers. We will remember where the president has said that they inherited liabilities from the former administration, and also we are seeing Rubado also talking about the fact that they have actually fought oil theft among many other corruption. So Obi here is challenging the federal government to actually declare the state of inherited, talking about both the debt and also the credit that they got from the former administration. You can find more detail of that particular story in page 7. Undo cabinet members pass vote of confidence in Akeredolu. Details found on page 6. And also we have Supreme Court branch justices to Samani, Adar, 20 others make FJSC recommendation list. Detail on page 6. We will use Imo as launch pad to grab the southeast. This is coming from Gandoji with detail on page 6. Police smash death threat, syndicate arrest suspect in Anambra State. Detail in the paper. Also, we have another story here talking about the MTEF and the FSP. Finance Minister insists on end to borrowing, with the writer here says Nigeria can't rely on borrowing to fund the 2023 budget. I think that should be 2024 budget. Concern mounting Senate over MD8's poor revenue projections and leakages. You can find detail of that story in the paper. Federal government set to boost education with digital blackboard technology. You can find detail of that story on page 29. We have a picture story on the front page. You can do well, grab the paper, read detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Voice of Liberty, in Zamfara State Appeal Court sacks governor, orders rerun. And in Kano, Apex Court fixes today for judgment on governorship election. Rather, the Appeal Court fixes today for judgment on governorship election. Senate summons military customs orders over insecurity. The big story in Nigeria has derailed from vision of founding fathers coming from Sultan of Sokoto. His Eminence Saad Abubakar III has said the country has derailed from the vision of its founding fathers. No major plan with PDP, a statement coming from Labour Party. Still in Sokoto State, scores killed as bandit trigger communal clash. And on bankruptcy, disclosed amount inherited from Buhari's government, Obi is asking President Tinubu to do so. And on insecurity, be patient, NSA appeals to Nigerians, and that's all the news on Voice of Liberty.
On the Nation newspaper, federal government can't rely on loans to fund 2024 budget, says minister. Detailed on page 5. Adeleke suspend Chief Justice despite court order. And on 2023 poll, why INEC experienced internal sabotage. You can find that in the paper. Sultan Hill Makinde for building a mosque in Ibadan State, detail found on page 27. And here also we are seeing academic senior lawyer snub in Supreme Court Justice nomination, with the writer here saying NJC gets 11 nominees to fill the vacancies, detailed on the front page and on page 4. Appeal Court declares Zamfara poll inconclusive, and here we're seeing judgment today in Kano poll, so our fingers are crossed. Let's see what the Appeal Court is going to say concerning the outcome of the election there. The big story coming from Ribado, government winning battle against oil theft and banditry, with the writer here saying oil production has risen to 1.7 barrels per day. Senate invites service chief for briefing, so you can find detail on front page and in the paper. 31 ESCO members pass confidence vote in Akeredolu. 2 commissioners abstain, return to Akure now, group tells governor, detail inside the paper. Always on display during off-season polls, says Abdul Salami panel. You can find detail on page 3, and that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On First News newspaper, the big story, Appeal Court sacks Zamfara governor and others rerun. Declares March 18 Grouper poll inconclusive. Mardun Birnin Magaji Bukuyum electorate to vote again. And at the top of the paper, IGP gives 613 deceased officers' families 2.2 billion naira. PDP non-liability to democracy, says APC. And we have the appeal court judgment remain calm, Kano tells residents. Suspected terrorist persecution resumes in 2 weeks, coming from the Justice Minister. Why we suspended nationwide strike, statement coming from organized labor. You can find the details inside the paper. And on Kano Guba, appeal court decides Friday. Bankruptcy claim disclose what you inherited, Obi tells the federal government. Service chiefs, IGP Sean Senior summons. This is still on insecurity. And we have Governor Adeleke defies court, suspends Osun Chief Judge. And we have Nigerian Chef Hilda Basi, aka Hilda Bachi, during her visit to the Guinness World Record Office in London, United Kingdom on Thursday. That is the picture story where we can see. And then still on First News, insecurity has reduced under Tinubu NSA Ribadu boost. And at the downside of the paper, presidency cabal influencing judicial decisions against us, PDP cries out. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
Alright, let's take a look at New Telegraph newspaper. And on loans, Nigeria to lose 40% of 2024 revenue to interest payment. Detail of the story can be found in the paper. And on the oil deal, Nigeria to withdraw $1 billion claims against Italian firm. Detailed on page 25. Senate reject bill seeking to legitimize constituency project. You can find that on page 5. FGSC nominates 22 justices for elevation to the Supreme Court bench. Appeal Court declares Zamfara Guba poll inconclusive. Also here we're having the big story that say off-cycle polls. We need to clean up our electoral system, Abdul Salami Abubakar is saying. Says citizens collide with merchants of corruption during polls. Gowon suspend reception from Akume, Wiki and others over poll litigation. You can find detail of that story on page 2 and 6. And I think this is something not only Abdul Salam have been talking about. I think even the former president, Goodluck Jonathan made mention of the fact that we have to look into our constitution in a way that we should stop having off-season election, because to some way it's actually affecting our democracy as a country, because with the way things are going, okay, right now we're seeing that even Zamfara election have been declared inconclusive. 3 local governments have been affected, so they have to be rerun, even though for the meantime the governor is still on seat until other measures have been put in place to see the election that will be run. But then looking at this off season, and just like we've said this before, the reason why we're having off season is a result of litigation, debt, and all of that. Most time is because of all of these court rulings that we're having.
Yes.
I'm not in support of these, let's go to court, and then before I realize it, we're having some states having their election when others are not actually having theirs. So I think it's the time for the government to look into how we can clean up our electoral system. We remember when we were seeing some interpretation that appeal court was giving, and Nigerians were kind of wowed by it, because this was not what Nigerians actually understood in the first instance, and here we're seeing another different thing. So I think it's important that let us have the INEC, let us have the constitution, let us have everything being done. Let's clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up, so that we can just know that we are having an election once and for all. Not have it, because I really do not know how they intend to actually do this, because already we're having off season. But let us avoid all of these things that are happening, because if eventually we're having Zamfara having a rerun, is another state again having an off season election. So we are looking forward to seeing that other stakeholders will be able to put heads together. Let us see how we can work to make sure that election is being done the way it should be done. If everybody does what he or she is supposed to do, we'll not be having issues like this coming up. And here they are saying that citizens are colliding with merchants of corruption during polls. Not only citizens, but having even leaders, people who are supposed to be upholding the law, actually being the reason why we're where we are today. So we are hoping that when we hear elder statesmen like this talking, I just hope that we'll have citizens that are willing to open their ears and listen, and then put the work as well.
Sela, to balance this all of cycle elections and all of that is going to be a tough time, because we already have tenors and time frame and all of that, and a lot of these off cycle elections are regard of these same issues over the years, either a governor being impeached, either 1 year later something happened in the state, and then elections needed to be conducted again, and all of that. And even if for some reason we try to create a balance that every election happens in the 36 states all at 1 year, except if we will keep having a perfect run, that nothing will happen again. Nobody will be impeached. Nothing will happen, that another off cycle. But I believe that that is not the problem to a large extent. Is it okay for us to have elections all at once? Fine. It will be a beautiful thing if we have that kind of organization. But when we are cleaning up our electoral system and making it perfect, I think the focus should be the no longer going to court thing. That is where we will see a neat, very, very neat electoral process, in the sense that when we conduct elections, we've said this number of times, countless times, that when we conduct election and whoever comes out as the winner is the winner, because that is the people's mandate. The people know that this is the person. INEC made it very free, fair, clear, credible for us. We have no reason to question INEC. And of course, the majority of the people there who knew this is who they wanted to be their governor are happy they had their governor elected into power and all of that. Because in the end, something will come up that an election have to be off cycle or off season and all of that. But let it be that with the off cycle election, let's not still be having something happening that will further prolong the process of this off cycle election. Like how we are seeing, instead of us to just be done by November 11 in Kogi State, we are now still seeing that there will be other 59 polling units. Now, this is the accuracy that we are lacking, that makes the electoral process, will I say cumbersome, or it's just too big and all of that. So I just hope that when we are cleaning up, let's really focus on what is the problem. Will it be great to have election all at once? Yes, it will be. But in the situation where it's not possible because of many other factors, depending on when these states became states, when they started having their election, what happened in the past that they couldn't have election, many things happen, and then these things can repeat themselves again. It doesn't mean bad governance or anything, it's just how things happen. But then when we are having this off cycle, how neat is the process by INEC that when we are done, if it's 11 November, we are done 11 November, all of these off cycle states on election will know their fate, we move and we focus on something else. But trust me, we will still be having case even for this off cycle election, move to 2024, and perhaps more states will join in the off cycle election because some petitions are still in court and they are waiting for. And I believe that these are the kind of cleanup that we drastically need.
And that's why, Rachel, I'm just hoping that we stop this off-season election, because, okay, as it is presently, it's just 8 states that are having off-season or off-cycle election, the remaining 28 states having. And if care was not taken, even the presidential election will get to a point that it will be off-cycle if we do not sit up, if the commission don't do what. Just imagine all of the litigations from from the tribunal down to the appeal court and then to the apex court and all of that. So if care is not taken, these are part of the things that leaders are afraid of. If we don't clean up what is supposed to be cleaned up at the right time, then we'll see issues, just like you're saying, more off-cycle election. We hope that will not happen. Still a New Telegraph newspaper, we have politicians' biggest challenge to Nigerians' political system. This is coming from an expert. You can find detail of that on page 2. Benue farmers in Nasarawa protest herdsmen genocide, says 4,700 farmers killed, 652, and also we have 260 households homeless. This is really sad one. We hope that the government will look into that issue. CSO say cancellation of the recent civil service promotional exam. You want to know why they do that or why they're actually seeking for that? You can do well to find detail on page 29. Coming from the finance minister, Nigerian can't rely on borrowing. Says the nation needs adequate revenue to fund budget as Senate raises concern over revenue leakages. Obi to Tinubu tells Nigerians how much you inherited. This is Obi telling the president to tell Nigerians how much they inherited from the past administration. And I really find this story really applaudable. Reason why? Because I think for the finance minister to say this, there's something he saw and he feels it's high time as a nation we look into how can we budget our own, or how can we finance our own budget without necessarily relying on borrow. Because you and I think at the time we looked at what we generate as revenue and how much our expenditure is, and then how much we need to actually borrow. So we are more like running on deficit more than actually having anything. And I really think we have mentioned quite a number of things that we can do. Here we're seeing already concerns over revenue leakages. Where are these leakages and how can we block these leakages? It will surprise me, Richard, that you say that an individual is even richer than a state. How comes? How can it be richer than a state? And we've said it here also a number of times, the fact that we see that mostly what is keeping Nigeria moving is the fact that individuals are the one keeping the country moving, and not even the government businesses, because most of the businesses we're having are run by individuals eventually. So we have to look into how can we also have more. Here we're saying the government is trying their best to see how they can get revenue through taxes and all of that. But some taxes are even unrealistic eventually when you even look at it. We remember that of the 40% that they're asking from institutions. And here we saw Polytechnic and universities saying they can't because they are even running short of funds to run the educational system there. So how is the government expecting them to actually remit 40% of that? So I think it's high time that when we have our lawmakers sitting, there should be critical thinkers that would think, what more can we do to actually generate revenue? We've said it, there are a number of sectors that are lying down idle, and nothing is happening over there in those sectors. Rather, we keep, pushing money into those revenues and nothing is happening. You remember those other 4 or 3 refineries that we saw money is being injected always and nothing is happening in those places for the past how many years? 10 years since 2010. So quite a number of things need to be done if we are serious about not borrowing. Then we have to put the work done, or else, I'm sorry to say, but we'll keep borrowing as long as it will take us to borrow.
Right. I mean, select out just the word. We are going to keep borrowing until we do what that won't make us borrow, rather, because the former finance minister knew that we can't continue on borrowing. The past administration before now, 8 years, 10 years ago, knew that we cannot continue borrowing. But with the way Nigeria is now, Sele, if we don't borrow, the government can't even pay salaries. If we don't borrow, everywhere will be shut down as it is currently. Because in the past, we've been borrowing and didn't channel these borrowed funds to revenue
right
generating
sectors
sectors and all of that. For example, Sele, let's use the election. Understand? As important as it is, elections don't have to cost Nigeria billions of naira. But when we refuse to invest in the sector, that will stop. Because why? Why is it consuming billions when this is not a revenue generating thing in the first place? Nothing wrong with us conducting election. We need it for governance. That's not what I'm saying. But why is it consuming this much money? Because we have refused to put in the modalities for it not to consume such money. When the digital world is evolving, is because the government sees that if we're able to put certain things in place, we won't need to spend billions in doing certain things. And over the years, we've neglected it. Why? Because we are also in a position where we are comfortable with corruption, because someone is thinking now the money I will make from elections, if this thing is being done this way, I won't make that much. So we refuse to push for the things that are supposed to happen. If not, I keep saying it, the government of Nigeria knows everything they need to put in place for us to be where we are today. But then the work is not being done. And we can say that for every other thing. Are we supposed to be concerned about having a population census that is going to go billions and billions? Even foreign aids that we are getting for the census is not even holding, is not possible, it's not enough. And we're still needing more and more money for census. Are we supposed to outgrow such level? Yes. Why? Because the census doesn't generate anything. Therefore, it has no business consuming such billions of naira. So when you see things like this consuming funds in a country, and the things that are supposed to generate revenue don't get up to that amount, then you know there's already a problem. And until we start fixing these things, we will continue borrowing. Because as it is now, the finance minister, yes, we can continue on borrowing money, but as it is now, we are very dependent on borrowed funds. What will change is what this administration begins to do with the borrowed money. What will change? That is all that is going to change, Sele. But unless we have an administration or government that is ready to start channeling the resources of Nigeria the right direction, we are going to remain where we are. I'm not predicting. It's not a prediction. It's just the fact. It's out there. It's not me saying Nigeria will not grow. No, it's the fact of what things are as it is. Black and white as it is there, that until we start channeling our revenues, these borrowed funds, to the right direction, then we will start seeing that we can outgrow borrowing. But until then, we will still be where we are, and we will be recording very little amount of growth.
Well, talking about recording amount of growth, I just hope with all of the people the president have been going to get investors into the country and the money we keep borrowing, I think the lesson here is to actually channel these funds to the right place. Yeah. If these funds are being channeled to the right place, because I remember the past administration gave a reason for all of the excessive borrowing they're doing, talking about infrastructures, and Nigerians were very open to like, oh, where are the things you say you borrow for infrastructure? We're still suffering from power grid, we're still going through bad roads, educational system is still there, agric and all of that. So where was the money actually going to? So just like we said, it's not wrong to actually borrow, but if you're borrowing and it's going to the right place, it will get to a time that those things or those sectors that you actually inject the money will start generating money on its own without us borrowing. Well, let's quickly look at other few stories on the front page of the paper. Tinubu inherited security challenges capable of crippling the Nigerian economy, coming from Ribado, with some few riders under it. And also here we are having a study that says painkillers used in those under 25 tied to mental illness. So for those who are fond of taking painkillers, it's important that you read this study so you can know how to actually reduce your intake of painkillers. And that's all on New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, Tinubu's economic reforms may lead to emergence of a new consumer class in Nigeria. A statement coming from Morgan Stanley. You can find details of his statement on page 2. Dollar-based tax laws will be amended by Nigeria Emergency Economic Intervention Bill. We've seized 45 billion naira looted funds coming from the federal government, says terrorist financiers identified. The big story on the paper: revocation of visa, Saudi government airpeace in war of words. Onyema exonerates airpeace of any wrongdoing. Saudi government wants travelers to review documents to ensure conformity. You can find details on page 2. Shell offers solution for curbing carbon emissions in Nigeria. 22 justices nominated for elevation of Supreme Court. Court declares Zamfara governor poll inconclusive, orders be run in 3 local government areas. Adeleke defies court order, suspends Osun Chief Judge Ojo. And on bankruptcy claim, why Tinubu must disclose what he inherited from Buhari. A statement from Peter Obi. We still have a picture story that has been on most of our paper. In Guinea-Bissau, Tinubu with African leaders. And that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Richard, this story I'm really worried, and I know Nigerians are worried as well. We have seized 45 billion naira looted funds coming from the federal government, and the writer here says terrorist financiers identified. Rachel, they have been identified since last year. In fact, they have been identified since maybe 2 years. So what really is the problem? Why is the government refusing to make their identity known to Nigerians? What are we protecting? Who are we protecting? What are we afraid of? I mean, a lot of people that die in Richard. We saw the number of people that have died in Benue, number of people that are homeless. Yesterday we saw in the paper those who were actually in the IDP camps where fire rushed down their house. And here we are seeing that they have been identified. Says terrorist financiers identified, and we don't have their names. We don't know who they are. When we want, are they faceless people? They are not, Rachel. They have a face, and that is why at the time when the government was talking about unknown gunmen, I said they are known. There's nothing unknown about those people. They are known because they live in a community. They have family. They have friends. In fact, some people know them, but because of fear of what will happen, a lot of people have refused to speak out about the saying that this is where these people are. And what we're trying, and I know Nigerians want to hear, that these people should be brought to book so that we can have peace and some elite sanity in the country eventually. A lot of people cannot sleep with their eyes closed. In fact, for you to leave your home and get to a place of wherever you want to, whether it's your work or where, it takes the grace of God. So I'm just hoping that beyond the government making it on the paper that they are being identified, they should be persecuted as well, so that Nigerians will know that yes, the government is working. Yes, we are applauding, according to Ribado, that we have actually recorded success. I mean, insecurity it's not like the way it used to be. Well, kudos to the security agency for a well done job. But then how about what is happening right now? How about the people that have been identified? Have they been brought to book? We keep saying that let the rule of law take its place, regardless of who you are. Let the law catch up with you. This is not a law for who is actually who, or for a man. We are hoping that the government will know that yes, we have Nigerians at heart, and we really want Nigeria to progress. Because Rachel, if we do not deal with insecurity, forget all of this thing we're talking about, money being injected to various sectors, it won't work. Students will not be able to go to school if we don't deal with insecurity. That means the educational sector is going down. Farmers cannot go to the farm if they are not secure. Agriculture is going down. Even talking about the oil theft, if people are not secure, we'll keep losing money eventually. So what are we saying? Who are we deceiving? So I'm hoping that the government will actually look thoroughly into this. Yes, we are happy. I mean, you have seized about 45 billion looted funds. I mean, you and I were saying, I don't know, Abacha look keeps coming in and coming in and coming in. Yes. And I'm beginning to wonder, maybe some people actually hiding in disguise of Abacha dude and hiding the money somewhere. Maybe because Abacha is not here to defend himself. But then I'm just hoping that beyond all of this, our government will really prove to Nigerians that we are capable of protecting you, because that is your number one responsibility in the first place, to protect lives and property. Once the things are not working, forgive me, everything you do, Nigerians will not say, because it's only somebody who is alive that will be able to enjoy all of these facilities and other things, infrastructure that you are providing. So we're hoping that when stories like this make it to the paper, I believe Nigerians will be more happy if they see the work being done and know, okay, so place, this company was shut down because they're behind it, I think Nigerians will be happy to know that yes, the government is recording success. But we hope that we'll see that soon in a number of years or months if the government really have Nigerians at heart.
Sele, it's a little bit offensive for rather to say that insecurity has reduced. Is there successes? I feel maybe the Nigerian Air Force strikes, the terrorists, the loads of guns that, I mean, the trucks loaded with guns that have been intercepted in the past or has been exploded through airstrikes and all of that. But there's still insecurity, and I don't believe it has reduced. It haven't. Have there been some amount of success? Yes. Has it reduced? No. Ever since this administration, no. Because kidnapping is still going on. People in rural areas are not sleeping. Here in Haipang, they are not sleeping. In Plateau State, we remember Manguit was still under this administration shortly into power. So just because there's a 1 minute silence doesn't mean anything has changed. People are still getting kidnapped. I know people who were released barely 1 month ago. I know people who are currently kidnapped. And the insurgents, we saw it recently where it's starting in Katsina, Borno again. And Sokoto, yes, we just saw this recently. So why would you sit down and say it has reduced just because maybe the papers are getting tired of recording it, or some are not making it to the paper? Because it gets to a point, there's this thing about things when they keep happening, it gets to the point where it becomes normal. And it's no longer buzzworthy again because people, it's like it's happening all the time. Again, it's no longer buzzworthy. So media shifts their attention to what is making buzz at the moment. And you can't use that as the measurement that insecurity is down. Have you recorded some? So yes, we can give you kudos for the airstrike and the interceptions of some weapons. But are people having sleepless nights up till today because of attacks left, right, center in the country? Yes. Are there silent attacks going on? Yes. Are there people being kidnapped on a daily basis? Yes. If you are living in the urban area and then you manage to find your way traveling in the outskirts, your heart is in your mouth because you don't know what is waiting for you on the road, and you travelers have to keep finding new, safer route. And if this route is safe today, tomorrow is no longer safe. So let's be honest in this country and keep fighting insecurity. It's too early for you to start giving an administration kudos just because it's silent, just because the media is no longer carrying the news anymore, when you know very well these things are still happening very much in the country, because we don't want it reduced. So the standard is we want it gone completely. We want a Nigeria that we knew before, that was very peaceful, and people live their life in a way that allowed them to grow and flourish. That is what we want, and that is what we are expecting from this administration.
You know, no wonder even the Sultan of Sokoto is saying that maybe our founding fathers will be crying because this is not what they fought for. Yes. So I'm hoping that as a country we'll be able to look into this, and then, just like you said, we're still hoping that we'll fight against insecurity. Well, before we continue with other paper review, we'd love to take a time out at this moment, let you through all the stories we've taken, and when we come back, we'll open the phone lines. Please stay tuned with us.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, the program is The Dailies. We have been looking at a number of stories from our Nigerian newspaper that have been making the headlines on most of the paper, ranging from what the federal government is saying, where we have Ribadu saying that they have record success on the issue of insecurity, and then quite a number of other stories on the paper. We'd love to hear your own take about it, your views, what you feel about the story. Our number is on your screen at this moment. Do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us and be audible, so we can be able to hear you, and other viewers at home will hear you clearly as well. As they have Rachel Tanzi with me in the studio. Thank you, Rachel, for doing this. All right, let's take a look at the next paper before the phones start buzzing. On Daily Sun, we have ex-CBN Governor Emefiele for arraignment amid EFCC plan for rearrest. Detail of that story can be found on page 29. Still on Daily Sun newspaper, we have federal government making progress in fight against insecurity coming from Ribadu. Says Tinubu inherited tough period. Decries proliferation of small arms and light weapons. You can find detail on page 29. Economic growth hinges on improved public and private infrastructure partnerships coming from Shetima. And also we have Ojuko's title, Ekemba, Anyway, Not for Sale, IPOB 1, Anambra, Monarch, and others. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. And on international wall, Israel-Hamas War 2 killed as police shites clash in Kaduna State. You can find detail on page 29. Tension in Kano as appeal court delivers judgment today, with the rider APC snatching our victories through tribunals, PDP alleges. You can find out on page 6 and 27. And on the 2024 budget, federal government raised concerns over borrowing. You can find detail on page 26. Obi picks holes in federal government bankruptcy claim. Says the government spending behavior contradicts claim. President committed to minimizing pains of reform. This is coming from Wale Edu. You can find that on page 6. And downside of the paper, we have 22 justices nominated for Supreme Court seats. You can find that on page 26. And here we have a picture story at the China International Agricultural Machinery Exhibition 2023. We can see the Chairman Senate Committee on Privatization and Communalization, Dr. Oji Ozukalo. You can find more detail of the story, and that's all on Daily Sun newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, why we are against borrowing to finance 2024 budget, a statement coming from the finance minister. Southeast, North Central get 3 new Supreme Court justices each as FJSC nominates ex-CG and some 21 others for elevation. You can find details on page 10. Splinter group emerges in Edo PDP. Reps turn back representatives, insist service chiefs must appear. This is on insecurity. Ocean governor suspends CJ appoint Ofalabi to act, and you can find more details on page 10. The big story on the paper, governorship election, anxiety in Kano Plateau as court orders rerun in Zamfara State. 3 local government areas affected. 322 bodies not discovered in gravesite in Anambra coming from Truth Commission. 80-year-old woman dies in Lagos, building collapse. More details can be found on page 26. 60-year-old retired banker makes first class, wins 8 awards at UI convocation. You can find details on page 10. We have Sultan comments marking day on new October Central Mosque built by Oyo governor. You can find more details on page 13, and we can see the opening ceremony. And on insecurity, we inherited tough period, says Ribadu at editors conference. Details can be found on page 12, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
On the Punch newspaper on Forex, federal government blames low export earning plan diversification. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Banks USSD debt to telcos hit 200 billion naira. You can find detail of the story. Senate summons service chiefs demand security retreat. You can find more of it in the paper. Be patient, inherited crisis won't disappear overnight coming from Ribado. NSA appeals to Nigerians, say Tinubu inherited poor economy and insecurity. Exposed deficit inherited from Buhari be transparent. Obi challenges the federal government. And at Guinea-Bissau at 50, Tinubu pledges support for South African democracy. You can find detail of that inside the paper, and we hope that with this celebration we begin to see change in Africa. PSC MPF considers 65 years as police retirement age. You can find more in the paper. Still on human angle, we have 80-year-old woman dies in Lagos building collapse. It's a very sad story. Osun Assembly suspend Chief Judge Adeleke appoints replacement. You can find that on page 42, and that's all on the Punch newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper, at UI 60-year-old man bags first class in sociology. You can find details on page 5. Adeleke flutes court order sacks Osun Chief Justice. Our monetary policy stands already yielding results, a statement coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Breathing life into the people after insurgency, the Adamawa example. This is coming from NEDC. You can find details on page 19. The big story on the paper, NSA Ribadu, Nigeria. Surmounting security challenges, targets 2 million barrel per day crude for 2024, says Tinubu government most transparent administration ever. Senate summons security chiefs over current concerns. You can find details of the big story on page 6. Naira struggles again, depreciate to 827.82 Naira to a dollar at the official market. Senate confirms Maida as NCC Executive Vice Chairman. After 4 failed attempts, UN Security Council agrees on Israel-Hamas war. And at the downside of the paper, Zamfara March 18 global poll inconclusive, appeal court rules anxiety in Kano as Kabir Yusuf Gawuna no fate today. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, we're seeing a story here that is quite of interest. From recreation to chronic diseases and poverty, where we are seeing the big story on page 4 and 5 saying how sachet alcoholic drinks breed alcoholism throughout the national development. And I think this is really a story that a lot of youth, and we're seeing a picture here actually showing us what sachet alcohol drinks is doing. A lot of youth have actually become so addicted to it, and it's really a thing of concern. No wonder the Guardian newspaper is taking that story from recreation to chronic diseases and poverty. And we just remember celebrating the Diabetes World Day, 2 days back, and then these are part of the things also that trigger all of this diabetes and all of that. So I think this is a story that everybody should be interested to go through it and see, just in case you are beginning to, or you are starting, or you are thinking of starting. This is not something to start whatsoever, because eventually when you get deep into it, coming out will be very difficult. So it's really sad where we're seeing even the Guardian is taking it. That means it's a thing of concern, and we hope the government will join hands with other NGOs so we can fight this together. Still on the Guardian newspaper, service shutdown imminent as USSD debts hit 200 billion naira. With detail of that business story on page 20. 2 commissioners abstain as Ondo ESCO passes vote of confidence on Akeredolu. And we have the MTEF PSB, Nigerians can't rely on borrowing, must raise revenues to fund the 2024 budget, says Edu. And on insecurity, Buhari handed tough period to Tinubu, Ribadu lament. And the FGSC nominate 22 justices for elevation to the Supreme Court. Appeal Court sacks Zamfara governor, others rerun in 3 local government areas, with detail on page 3, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
The big story on this day newspaper coming from Fabemi, prosecution of alleged terrorists resumes in 2 weeks. Says federal government secured over 500 convictions, 45 billion naira for future in 2 years. And from Ribadu, Nigeria's security situation has improved under Tinubu. Urges Nigerians to be patient with president. You can find details on the front page and continue inside the paper. And at the top of the paper, coming from Wale Edu, Nigeria needs to generate adequate revenues, not borrowing to fund 2024. The budget not to fund 2024 budget. You can find more details on page 8. Federal government withdraws $1.1 billion case against Italian oil giants, and you can find details on page 5. Coming from Ganduje, we will use Imo as base to liberate Southeast. Court declares Zamfara Guba poll inconclusive, orders rerun in 3 local government areas, and we have a picture story where we can see the inauguration of the NDDC board, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
Newspaper capital importation to manufacturing sectors raised 88.2% to $861 million. You can find detail of the story on page 19. And on the editors confirm fireworks as stakeholders interrogate national security, threat to elections and media reforms. The big story still on the editors confirm why kidnapping has replaced armed robbery, coming from the NSA. Senate summoned the NSA service chiefs over insecurity. Reps Fum Tombak, service chief and IGP representative over debate on security challenges. Bandit Abdul Kaduna district head as soldiers ambush arms supplier. Gunmen kill abducted priest after collecting 1 million naira ransom in Kogi. This is really a very sad story. And coming from the NMA, they threatened strike over kidnap of 10 doctors in Enugu. I think that is the National Medical Association has threatened strike over kidnap of 10 doctors in Enugu. When we're talking about we're running short of doctors and then our doctors are being kidnapped. Well, we are hoping that something will be done in Enugu State so we can see that these doctors are brought back alive. Also here, the picture story here where it says the NDDC Governing Board inauguration. You can go through it to see more of that. Still coming from Wale Edu, where he's saying we can't continue borrowing to fund Nigerians' budget. We detailed on page 8. And on looted funds, we have seized 45 billion naira, identified terrorist financiers. You can find detail on page 9. CSO to Tinubu cancel recent civil service promotion examination. You want to know why that? You can find more on page 12. We have other columns on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the Vanguard and read detail of any story that is of interest to you.
On Punch Sport Extra, why Okoye missed World Cup qualifiers. Chelsea won't sign Osimhen in January transfer window. CAF Awards nomination thrills Abiodun. Adesanya laughing at Pereira. You can find details on page 2. Haaland will not force Madrid move. And we have Camavinga out for 8 weeks. United plays £50 million on Sancho. Mbappe won £30.6 million per year. You can find more details on page 6. The big story on the paper, we have 2026 World Cup qualifier, Nigeria 1, Lesotho 1. Imagine drawing against Lesotho that are ranked 153 by FIFA at your backyard. So many things are wrong with this team, including the manager himself. Angry fans slam Eagles after draw. We were unlucky, a statement coming from Pesero, and we didn't respect Nigeria, a statement coming from Lesotho coach. And we have a story that says Salah scores 4 in Djibouti route. You can find more details on page 3. And at the downside, we have Cricket World Cup, Australia set up in their final. Newcastle Wilson out till December. And that's all the news on Punch Sports Extra.
And then on Business Day newspaper, here is a story that I was looking very close at. Netflix subscriber numbers reflect Nigeria's economic struggle. That is to say that the number of people subscribing have seriously dropped. That is to tell you that something is happening. Well, where we are trying to see how things will work out there over there in the movie industry. You can look at that story on the front page and continue on page 30. Naira fall 9.8% in 3 months on the single forex regime. Detail of that on page 30. Business Day publisher gets the FMDQ Personality of the Decades Award. You can find that on page 2. 500,000 South African subscribers kiss DSTV goodbye. And I'm hoping and praying well with Nigeria also kiss DSTV goodbye. Let us have something indigenous to us and let us create revenue from there. You can find more of that on page 30. The big story for Business Day says soaring prices leave Nigerians caught between food and medicine because all of these are actually skyrocketing the price of drugs and also the price of food. So you can do also find more detail inside the paper. Also, we're having an explainer that says why inflation is cooling everywhere else but Nigeria. you ask the question, inflation is going down in other parts of the nation or other countries, but then it's not in Nigeria. You can find more of that on page 2. Also, we are seeing Afrexim Bank sign $50 million loan deal with Green Economy Zone Kaduna. You can find that on page 2. We have a picture to see showing the celebration of Guinea-Bissau at 50. You can find more detail of any story that is of interest to you on the business day. And I guess that's how far we can go in the program this morning. Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. And thank you to our viewers and supporters as whole for keeping a date with us on the Dailies. Until we come again, goodbye for now.